Welcome to the show. This is my podcast, the Hobnobbin with Slim Man podcast, and I am your host, the Slim Man, Slim Manicotti, Slim Papa, Showstopper, bringing you conversations with creative people on both sides of the showbiz curtain. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spreading the word. I do appreciate it. Today we're going to listen in on my chat with Patrick Clifford, a legendary music mogul type dude. Patrick Clifford has signed everyone from the Romantics to Blues Traveler to Etta James and the Neville Brothers. Right now I'm in Carlsbad, California, a little north of San Diego, a lot south of Hollywood. I drove from Palm Springs a couple of days ago, arrived here in beautiful Carlsbad, where I am house and dog sitting for a couple of slim friends. When I got here, they asked me to cook the kid. A surfer musician, Jack Johnson, Bob Marley, 20-something, had brought home some fresh halibut. I thought maybe he caught it barehanded while diving off his surfboard, but the kid bought it right off the boat that morning. Oh, she looked so nice. It was really beautiful and fresh. So we looked through the cupboard, found some flour, some capers, and some white wine, but no lemons. I told them that I had brought some lemons with me. I carry a few in my bag whenever I travel. I drink a couple of glasses of fresh lemon water every morning, and I take lemons with me just about wherever I go. Plus, the lemons, they make my clothes smell so nice. So here's what I did, slim people. It was quick and easy and delicioso. I had 2 pounds of halibut. I took 2 medium sauté pans. I put the pans over medium-high heat, and I added 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil to one pan, and just olive oil, about 4 tablespoons, in the other pan because the kid doesn't do dairy. Maron. All right, as the oil heated up, I took some flour and put it on a large plate. I cut the halibut into rectangular pieces about 3 inches wide, 4 inches long. I rinsed them off, patted them dry with paper towels, and then I put them in the flour and dusted them up. I put the fish in the pans, and I put some salt and pepper on top. Then I let them cook for about 3 minutes until the bottoms were golden brown. Then I flipped them over, added a sprinkle of salt and fresh cracked black pepper to the tops, and I cooked them for another 3 minutes on the other side until the bottoms were golden brown. Then I put all the fish cutlets on a large platter. All right, stay with me, slim people. I smashed 6 cloves of garlic. I peeled off the skin. I tossed 3 cloves of garlic in each pan. I swished them around for about 30 seconds, turned them over, and swirled them around again for about another 30 seconds. All right? You got to be careful when you do this next step. I added about half a cup of dry white wine to each pan. Now, you got to add the wine slowly and stand back because it's going to sizzle. And I don't want you scarring up that beautiful mug of yours with blisters from burning oil. All right, swish the wine around for about 30 seconds in each pan. Then add 2 tablespoons of capers and their juices to each pan. 4 tablespoons total, and swirl it around. Swirl those capers around for about 30 seconds. Then I took a lemon, I cut it in half, and I squeezed the juice of 1 lemon into one pan, and then I took the other lemon and did the same thing in the other pan. All right? Don't let any seeds get through. You don't want to be busting a bicuspid during din-din. All right, swirl the lemon juice around in each pan. And now pay attention, slim folks. I took some flour from the plate, just a little between my fingers, and I threw some in each pan and whisked it in. I wanted the sauce to be more like a light gravy than a sauce, so I added just a little more flour to each pan and whisked it up until it was just right. And then I poured the sauce over the fish, and wow, she was so nice. There were 4 of us, and we ate all 2 pounds. Yes, we did. That was how good it was, slim people. It was a delish. I put the recipe up on slimmancooks.com free for all slim people. Just a quick reminder, all this took less than 10 minutes, start to finish. You got to move quick, slim people. You have to saute the fish right after you flour it. You have to make the sauce right after you take the fish out of the pan, and you have to pour the sauce on the fish and eat it right away. You leave that stuff sitting around, and it gets all gooey and gummy. Anyway, that's my latest creation, halibut with capers and white wine and lemon. The next morning, everybody left the house for vacation, and I had the place to myself, just me and the two dogs, a big German shepherd and a wolf-like beast, kind of like a husky dog. Very scary-looking dogs, but actually very sweet. Yesterday, I drove to Irvine. It's about an hour north of Carlsbad, California. I went there for a podcast masterclass that was hosted by Adam Carolla. You know him? He's a comedian. He had a TV show called The Man Show, which I've never seen. And he has the most successful podcast in the whole wide world. Yes, it's true. He's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records for most downloaded podcast. So I'd figure I'd see what Adam Carolla had to say about podcasting so I can bring you slim people a new and improved podcast. All right, the class is held at a comedy club called the Improv, and it was about 6 hours long, the class was. There were maybe 120 people there. Adam and his crew went over everything you need to know to do a podcast from start to finish. And in the beginning, they took a poll, and about 50% of the audience did not have podcasts or had never podcasted, and 50% of the people in the audience had started podcasts. It was a wide mix of people, men, women, young, old, a wide variety of folks. I got to admit, Adam Carolla was funny and charming and full of great advice. He does a podcast 5 days a week, about an hour and a half a day. He said he gets more recognition from his podcast than he does when he does the Jimmy Kimmel Show on TV. Halfway through the podcast masterclass, they asked people to give their pitches for their podcasts. And I, the slim one, stood up and told the panel about my Hobnobbin with Slim Man podcast. I gave them my pitch. You had 30 seconds, and they had a big timer on a big screen right behind the stage. Well, if I had known I was going to give a pitch, I would have practiced for a few years. But I gave my pitch, and after it, Adam asked me if I was in the music biz. I told him I was, and he said, "You look like it." And after the class, I went up to Adam. We talked for a quick minute, and then I drove back to Carlsbad and practiced for the big band show on August the 27th at Bernardo Winery in San Diego. It's with an 18-piece big band, and I'm going to do some Frank and some Dino and some Nat, and it's also going to be a release party for the new Slim Man CD, Young at Heart, which is going to be here soon. It's a collection of all kinds of songs. All right, let's drop in on my chit-chat with Patrick Clifford. It took place in Nashville, Tennessee, at his house in East Nashville. Patrick told me all about his long and outstanding career as an A&R guy. Now, A&R stands for Artists and Repertoire, and that means the A&R guy or gal is supposed to look for artists to sign and great songs for them to sing. And Patrick has signed lots of guys and gals you might have heard of. He signed the Romantics. He signed Etta James, what a great blues singer. He signed Blues Traveler, and he also signed the Neville Brothers, one of my favorite bands. The story of how he signed the Neville Brothers is pretty fascinating. So let's check out my chat with Patrick Clifford. We're on, we're in, we're up, we're happening. So, you were born
I definitely was born
in South Africa?
No.
You were born in the jungles of Peru?
No.
Raised by pygmies?
No.
Where were you born?
Queens.
That's where my dad was born.
Long Island City. Astoria General Hospital. Long time ago.
Where did you go after you was born?
I went to an apartment in Queens, in Astoria.
And it
with
was
my mother and father.
Diamond Jim and the lovely Doris?
Hockey Doris.
Hockey Doris.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go after that?
We went to Pittsburgh in 1960, and I had a Whitey Ford baseball glove and a Mickey Mantle baseball bat. Then we went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, And it was the year the Pirates on Bill Mazeroski's home run beat the Yankees in the World Series. No, we only stayed there for a year and a half, and then we moved to Washington, D.C. But I will say, in retrospect, growing up in Pittsburgh, in Pleasant Hills with my mother and father and my 3 siblings, and my mother's mother who lived with us, and the friends I had, I had a really beautiful childhood for the most part. But again, I always thought New York was really home for me. When I was in high school, my last 2 years, I was politically active in regards to the Vietnam War, civil rights, and I was so influenced as a young man by John F. Kennedy that I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to get a history and English degree, and then I wanted to get a law degree. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I wanted to become a politician. Ever since I was a kid, my brother and I, who's a few years younger than I, we had these blankets on our bed that were from the University of Notre Dame. And between, again, back in those days with network TV and college football, that they showed a lot of Notre Dame games, and you knew about Notre Dame. And between being raised Irish, Catholic, it was like a dream, thinking like, well, I have to go there and at least see it and apply. My father and I drove from Pittsburgh to South Bend, Indiana. I had never been west of the state of Pennsylvania in my life. We got to Notre Dame, checked into a motel. We went, had an interview. So the guy goes, the admissions counselor said, "Do you like sports?" I said, "I love sports." He goes, "I got 2 tickets for you and your father tonight. You're going to sit behind the bench at the basketball game. Digger Phelps, you'll get to meet him, and you're going to meet the kid that I keep in college who's our star player." I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, I keep him in college because I doctor his grades." I'm like, "What did you say?" He goes, "Yeah." And he then used an N-word because the gentleman was African-American.
Dang.
And said, "I keep this kid in college, and he's our star player." I said, "What did you say?" And I literally stood up, and I said to this guy, I said, "I want nothing to do with any institution that would have someone like yourself representing them, let alone the University of Notre Dame, and I am completely shocked, and I'm leaving." And my father looked at me and said, "Son, do you know what you're doing?" I said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." I walked out, and my father came out seconds later, maybe 15 seconds later, and he goes, "Patrick, do you know what you're doing?" I said, "I want to leave immediately." And we got in the car. We started driving back to Pittsburgh, and we got stuck in a big fog storm in Dayton, Ohio. I didn't know anything about Dayton, Ohio. I knew that the Wright brothers were from Dayton, Ohio. I didn't know what else was there. And we checked into a motel. Next morning, I got up and went through the yellow pages. I found the University of Dayton. And it was a beautiful sunny day the next day, and it was spring. And we went out on the campus, and there was music, and there were people, and there was vibrancy, and there were people talking about stop the war, and there's people talking about, segregation has to stop, and we're all one people. And it was just, amazing. It was 1970.
Where did the music business come into play? I mean,
The music thing came because there was always music in our house. My father collected a lot of records, a lot of jazz, a lot of Irish music. Obviously, when, the Beatles and pop music popped in America, I started buying 45s, and that was a big part of my life. But even bigger than that was Bobby Nacco, Lonesome Bob Nacco, in Brooklyn Heights. He worked in a record store, and Bobby was, 2 years older than I, and he was hip, and he was like on the front end of this massive cultural revolution of music and fashion and politics, and he would always turn me on to some incredible music. I mean, I remember being a little kid and Bobby Nacco holding up a transistor radio, and playing Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan the first time I ever heard it. And so we'd always be out listening to WABC and all the music that was happening. And
So when you're at University of Dayton, though, you're going to study, history. Your intentions of being a lawyer. You're studying literature. I mean, how did you evolve into the music business?
Well,
I mean,
again, music was everything. It was, all the English rock, the English invasion of music, the rock that was happening in America. There was music everywhere. And, I started working in a music store, and we started working at the radio station. We started promoting shows.
the college radio station?
Oh, yeah, WVUD.
And you're doing the radio station, the college radio station.
My
VUD.
friends and I, we all worked there. We would DJ. We'd hang out there all night long. We'd drink beer. We'd smoke pot. We'd play records. And there were no playlists. There wasn't Clear Channel. It wasn't like iHeart Radio. It was a college radio station, but it had a massive signal that you could hear this in Indianapolis. You could hear it in Cincinnati. So all these bands would want to come and play there because they were getting exposure at that point.
And so you got into what, concert promotion?
I actually promoted, small venues like what would have been, a house party back then, and, shows in, college houses and small clubs. There was a XXX theater. And aside from the fact it was a XXX theater, it was run by these lowbrow mafia guys. And it was actually a really beautiful theater as opposed to the seedy 42nd Street. And I went to them once and I said, "Can I promote a show here?" And what are you talking about? I said, "I want to promote a rock band here."
At the strip club.
It wasn't a strip club. It was like a theater.
Oh, a theater.
Yeah.
Like where you watch dirty movies.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I told them that. They said, "Do you have money?" I said, "Well, yeah, I have some money." And we had money because we were probably selling pot, We used to sell pot to the Ohio Players.
No.
Yeah.
They were one of my favorite bands.
We used to sell pot to those guys. They'd buy suitcases of it from us. And literally, I'd start looking at bands that were playing in Indianapolis, and I'd just start calling people. And we're doing this on payphones and calling cards that we've either got from our parents or we've scraped enough money together to make these calls. And I started calling agents and tried to find bands that had a day off between going to Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati. Tried to do a Little Feat concert.
Little Feat?
Yeah, it didn't come together. It got canceled the day before.
One of my favorite bands.
It was just I got a taste for it. So I really started focusing more on music and what I wanted to do. But Clive Davis released his book, his first book back then. It was probably 72, 73. And I read the book, and it changed my life. And there's no way to get information about the record business at that point. There, no internet. There were no schools teaching you too can be a business executive in the music business. But I read the book, and to this day, I keep it over here. And to this day, every time I see Mr. Davis, I always thank him. And he always goes, "Oh, Patrick, it's not about me. It's about you. Congratulations." But the point being is, it made so much sense because he talked about, the stuff about all the artists, whether it's, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Big Brother and
Donovan.
Everybody, all the people he speaks about. That part I got. Not that I was, hanging out like that at the Beverly Hills Hotel, but that made perfect sense to me, because that had already hooked me. But he talked about the business of it in regards to marketing and promotion and sales and teams. Literally, I was like, holy God, I'm going to be an A&R guy. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the guy that goes and finds talent, signs them up, brings them into the studio, brings them into the company, and builds the consensus for people to go out and take it to the streets to hopefully build a fan base, a career, and do something of what I thought was massive importance.
But what was your first big break? I mean, who you had to knock on one door and finally it opens.
So a friend of mine who I went to college with, his wife said, "Well, go meet Jack Leitenberg at the Bottom Line, the nightclub
Yeah, the bottom line.
Yeah,
Down the village.
down in the West Village by NYU. So I'm like, cool. I go down there. I ask for Jack Leitenberg. He just happens to be sitting there in the ticket box. He goes, what do you need? I said, I want to come to work here. He goes, when can you start? I said, I was friends with Sandy and Bob Zeta. And he was very close with Sandy and had gotten to know Bob. He says, when can you start? I said, I can start now. He goes, good. You get one beer at the end of the night, one slice of pizza, and it's $20 a night. I'm like, okay. He goes, good. There's a guy in the back named Warren Zevon. He's loading his gear in. Go help him get his shit into the building. And I worked there for 6 months, every night of the week. And I would use it to meet agents, executives, artists.
Yeah, that was the big club.
But at the bottom line, at a show that was Carly Simon with her then husband, James Taylor, I got to work the back door. I met Nat Weiss, who was my mentor, and to this day,
What was his label?
he had Nemperor Records. Nemperor
Right,
Records.
I remember.
Nat was a gay Jewish attorney from the Upper East Side who became an incredibly successful divorce attorney early in his career, and sometime in the early 60s, he somehow met Brian Epstein, and whatever their relationship was, Nat became the American manager of the Beatles fan club, the American manager of the Beatles fan club, then the merchandise, then the management, and he managed Brian Epstein as a manager to a manager of the biggest group on earth. One day, I went to a luncheon where Nat was at, and Nat says, I want you to come to my office later this afternoon. I want to talk to you about offering you a job. And he goes, listen, tomorrow morning, we're going to Cleveland, Ohio. I'm like, we are? And I was working with an artist named Steve Forbert.
Steve Forbert.
Alive on Arrival, his first record.
Yeah.
Just came out.
Was he on Emperor?
He was on Emperor.
Right.
And Nat signed him. I got to help finish the first record and worked with Steve for 4 records. But
great songwriter.
We went to Cleveland, Ohio, because there was one station in America playing his record, and they went there to do a show for the station, and it was nuts. I was with Nat, Linda Stein, who was then Seymour Stein's wife, and Danny Fields, who is remarkable, iconic music personalities, and they managed at that time 2 acts: the Ramones and Steve Forbert.
And now a word from our lovely sponsors. Are you looking to buy or sell a home in the Palm Springs area? Are you? Sure, it gets a little hot out here in the summertime, but that didn't stop Johnny Depp from buying a home out here. That's right, Johnny Depp, Leonardo DiCaprio, Slim Man, they all live out here. And if you want to buy or sell a home, I suggest you reach out to Cindy Gouze. She's with Berkshire Hathaway. They're a good company, and she's been living in the Palm Springs area for the past 20 years or so. She knows the real estate market like nobody else. She's got years of experience, and she's the go-to gal if you're looking for a condo or a house or a vacation home. So no matter what your real estate needs are, you need to reach out to Cindy Gouze with Berkshire Hathaway. Give her a call, 760-485-2505, or send her an email at cindy.gouze@outlook.com. That's 760-485-2505, or cindy.gouze, that's G-U-S-S and Sam, E, @outlook.com. All right, now let's get back to my chat with Patrick Clifford. Now, I got to say this before we drop in on this next part of the conversation, because in this segment, Patrick talks about how he signed a band called The Romantics, a group out of Detroit, but Patrick never mentions the band by name. So whenever you hear Patrick in the following conversation say the band, he's talking about The Romantics. All right, here we go. Patrick Clifford talking about the Romantics.
The first act that I ever signed was because I was with Danny Fields in his office. Started telling me, I saw these boys last night. They're so great. They're from Detroit. They have these red suits on, and their music's wonderful. And they're playing again tonight at Hurrah's on the Upper West Side. And I'm thinking, Danny Fields, who's been with The Doors, Iggy Pop, Tim Buckley, who shaped the musical landscape of Elektra Records, and Jack Holzman, who to this day speaks about Danny like he was a prophet. I'm like, I ain't going to miss that. So I'm making these mental notes, and I'm going to Hurrah's tonight. And I'd been going to Hurrah's, and it was close to my house and, or my apartment. So literally that afternoon, there was no AccuWeather, no, storm watch. There was a massive snowstorm in New York, and the city was closed down. There was like 2 feet of snow. And I literally was able to walk from my apartment. I was living on 75th Street between Columbus and Central Park West, to walk over to Hurrah's. And I went there, and there were 11 people there. And these guys come out, and they start playing. And I'm like, holy God. And they got the red leather suits on that really, I don't think they're really leather. It's more like Naugahyde. And literally, I heard, for the first time, What I Like About You, and a handful of other songs that were on their first record. And I'll never forget going back into the dressing room afterwards. And I walked in, I introduced myself, and I said, I'm going to sign you guys to a record deal. I don't really know what that means, but trust me, I'm going to sign you guys.
You signed the Romantics right there?
We signed those guys. I told Nat about them. I convinced Nat to go to Detroit with me to see them play. Nat saw them that night, and he really liked them a lot, and we ended up, doing a deal with them, and we signed them, and, then I had to go find a producer. And
yeah, who produced that record?
This guy, Pete Solly.
He went on to do what?
Pete Solly had done a record that I loved that was on Stiff Records, and Pete Solly happened to be in Australia making a record, and again, he was sending, telegrams to get people's attention. And I don't know how it happened. I wish I could remember all the specifics, but we finally found him, and he went back to England. We flew him to New York. He saw the band. He said, I want to do it. Nat had a condo in Fort Lauderdale. We found a studio in North Miami called River Sound, I believe. We went down there, did it at the end of August. It was really fast. He had an engineer named Steve Brown who was remarkable. We cut that record, and then there was a hurricane that came through that area, and we literally took all the tapes back to Nat's condo, which was maybe on the 21st floor, and it's like, yes, it's going to come on shore in Fort Lauderdale. And like, we're in Fort Lauderdale. We're right here on the Atlantic Ocean. I guess this is the end. We had a big hurricane party, and luckily, it came on shore, like in West Palm Beach. And I remember getting the record mixed. And I said, there's only one place right now to go play What I Like About You to see if this is a hit or not.
So you knew the first single was going to be What I Like About You.
It was
just obvious.
It was stupidly obvious to me.
So where'd you go play it? What'd you do? Take an acetate or something?
And someone goes, well, what radio station? Do you know somebody here in Miami? I said, we're not going to a radio station. We're going to the adult ballet. We're going to a strip club.
The adult ballet.
And we had it played there. And not only did the dancers obviously love the song.
Wait, no. So you take this song to a strip club and you tell the DJ to play it while the girls are dancing?
Yeah, and we gave him like $20 or $50, and
the DJs played the song, the strippers are there.
People went crazy. And the record, when we put it out, only went to number 49 on the top 100.
Did it eventually take off, or it wasn't immediate, because you hear that song every day now?
Well, that's made hundreds of millions of dollars in publishing revenue from sync placement, whether it be film and TV, advertisements.
All right, speaking of advertisements, how about another word from our lovely sponsors? Have I told you about Uline, U-L-I-N-E? It's one of my favorite businesses to deal with. I've been using Uline for years whenever I need shipping supplies for my CDs and cookbooks and stuff. I call Uline. You know what I love about them? You call them and a human being answers the phone, a real live human being. They have your complete ordering history right in front of them. You tell them what you want and they ship it right away. I don't know how they do it, but they always seem to get my orders to me the next day without all the big shipping fees. Check out their website, uline.com. That's U-L-I-N as in Nancy, E.com. Or give them a call at 800-295-5510. I use them all the time, Slim people. Good folks to do business with. Another one of our sponsors here at Hobnobbin with Slim Man is the Foundation for International Aid to Animals, helping animals by helping people care for them. The FIAA is a nonprofit family foundation based right here in the good old US of A. The FIAA has pioneered sterilization and treatment programs for homeless and sheltered dogs. They're doing some good work. And they also help people with limited resources treat and care for their pets. Check out their website, aidtoanimals.org. You can find out about all the great work they're doing for abused and neglected animals all around the world. They give support to wildlife rescues and sanctuaries and reintroduction programs. They've funded documentaries to bring attention to the problems of homeless and unprotected animals. And it's a real inspiration to see an organization that cares so much, that does so much to help. And if you get inspired, there's a donate button. That's aidtoanimals.org. Alrighty, let's dig back into my chit-chat, my conversation with Patrick Clifford. When I first met you in 1980, I was playing at a club in the Hamptons called Neptune Beach Club. Mm-hmm. My band was on stage. You and your cousin Bobby Nocco come walking through the club.
Yep.
I look at both of you, and I'm like, I need to go and introduce myself to these guys.
Right.
I didn't even know who you were. We
didn't know who we were.
Yeah. And I went and I introduced myself, and we've been friends ever since. So did Nat Weiss and Brian Epstein, were you ever in the presence of the Beatles? Were you ever
I got to meet all four Beatles, never together, but the guy that impressed me the most was Neil Aspinall, who was the Beatles' manager, or the road manager, and John Lennon's best friend, who went on to run Apple Records up until his death. And he came to see Nat. Neil Aspinall had that same Liverpudlian accent that John Lennon had. You thought it was John Lennon talking, and they were boyhood friends, and they grew up together. And he was a pretty strong-armed cat when I met him.
Neil Aspinall.
And he would come to see Nat, and they would sit, and they would, without me knowing it before that meeting, they'd sit for a day, 2 days, and order Chinese food and drink scotch and talk about all the Beatles stuff. And it was like omerta. It was like the mob. So Neil's sitting there, and Nat's like, Patrick, come in here. I want you to meet Neil. I go shake his hand, say hi, and then Neil sort of dismisses me. And Nat's like, no, he can stay. He's my guy. He goes, get him the fuck out of here.
Neil Aspinall said that to Nat about you.
Looking at me. And I'm like, yes, sir. I'll see you guys later. Send up a flare if you need Chinese food or more scotch. And literally, I walked out, starting to walk out, and Nat's like, no, he's okay. He's my guy. And after a couple of minutes of this going back and forth and me being more uncomfortable than I've ever been in my life, Neil Aspinall looks at me, and he's glaring at me. He says, okay, if Nat says you can stay, you can stay. But if you tell anybody anything that you hear and hear, I will choke you to death with my own 2 hands. And I'm like, Timmy, my blood, I had no blood.
What do they talk about?
I can't tell you.
Oh, okay.
He's got a ghost, too. He'll come down here and yabba-dabba-doo.
They're both passed on now, right?
Yeah. Nat passed away 2 years ago, maybe 3. but I got to do so much, be around so many amazing artists. I got to hang out with James Taylor, Cat Stevens. One day Cat Stevens comes into the office. He's Yusuf Islam, John McLaughlin in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Miles Davis, Bonnie Raitt, Peter Asher. It was just, I get to sit with the biggest executives, the biggest managers, the biggest agents.
You met each individual Beatle on separate occasions, like John Lennon. Like, what was? Were you just hanging out at a bar? Were you?
No, I was in my apartment on the Upper East Side. I got a call from that. It was Saturday night. He goes, "I need you to come over to watch a couple of guys." I'm like, okay. They went to his apartment. He was in the 68th and.
This is Nat Weiss's apartment.
Because Nat was going to go out. It was Saturday night.
And he had two guys in his apartment. Says, you got to come babysit.
So I go over there. He goes, just take care of these guys, okay? If it gets crazy, call me at this number. Again, there's no cell phones. I'm going out for a while. He was going out, obviously, to, find some action. I walk inside. I hear someone banging on a piano. A little electrical piano. It's a small little anteroom in Nat's apartment. And it's Mr. Lennon pounding on a piano.
John Lennon.
And on the couch is a gentleman named Harry Nilsson, who is unconscious. And this is after he's passed out. And John Lennon's screaming, and he's screaming at me because I'm the only person listening, and he's telling me what a piece of shit he is. He's never written a song. He's worthless. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, mother of God, I'm going to open the window and jump out of Nat's window, which was 16 stories to the ground. This is the guy who I idolize, and he's written, the soundtrack to so many people's lives. And he finally goes to me, he goes, in that same outrageous accent, I've never written a song in my life. I'm not a songwriter. I'm a piece of shit. That guy there, he's a songwriter. And I went over, and I grabbed Harry Nilsson's wrist, and I took his pulse, and I said, John, I think we've lost Harry. And it wasn't soon after that Nat came back, and I was like, I got to get out of here. And I left. But that was the only time I was ever around John Lennon. And once or twice,
And Harry Nilsson lived.
He lived.
He lived.
Not much longer, but he did live.
So what happened after Nemper?
After Nemper, I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to go. I went to work for Epic Records in Los Angeles. I moved to L.A. for the first time ever. It was 84. When I was there, they said, we want you to take care of 3 acts that nobody else wants to work with. I'm like, who's that? And they're like, well, Stevie Ray Vaughan. I'm like, okay.
Stevie Ray?
Well, there was really nothing to do, and he was going through a tough time in his life as well. But to be around him was amazing, and to this day, he's one of the greatest artists, and he was the Miles Davis of Texas.
Yeah.
We got this band called the Miami Sound Machine. Nobody wants to talk to them. You take care of them. I'm like, okay.
Gloria Estefan.
Yep, and Emilio. And there's these 5 guys that are over in Encino, and they're out of their mind. It's the Jackson 5. You go talk to them. And I would go and meet with them, but they never made a record the whole time I was with them. It was a really disjointed time in their career. And again, I tried to sign, a lot of different things. The Georgia Satellites,
I remember you telling me about that.
That broke my heart.
Yeah, because you were so crazy about that band. I remember you telling me.
And there were countless other things that we were trying to sign at that point. It just wasn't happening. And so I went to A&M and went to work for Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss out in New York City. And it was 6 of the best years of my life, as were the years I was with Nat Weiss.
That label, I mean, you think about A&M, who they signed.
It was stunning.
I mean, Police, Janet Jackson, Split Ends, Supertramp, a billion great.
It goes on and on. Soundgarden.
Yeah.
I'll never forget being in Herb Alpert's office with Chris Cornell and the guys from Soundgarden. And, I think we called Chris Cornell's mother so she could speak to Herb Alpert. And then we went across the street to a strip club and played demos of theirs. That was right across the street from...
So you took the Soundgarden CDs to the strip club?
To the testing ground.
What was it because Chris Cornell's mom was so in love with Herb Alpert that they signed with A&M?
I don't know if that was the turning point, but I think it had something to do with it, quite frankly.
So where did you go after Herb Alpert
after
and Jerry
A&M,
Moss.
I left there and I went to work at Chrysalis Records.
There was a band called Child's Play. It was from Baltimore. Were
Oh,
they
yeah.
During your time or before or after?
That was during that time.
Yeah.
And what was the drummer's name? The guy was...
Yeah, he's still around. John.
It's John.
Yeah, it was Brian Jack. And yeah.
Brian Jack, right?
And it was a singer.
And they were great.
Yeah, and then they had an album out from Baltimore. And I later, after they broke up, I worked with Brian Jack. We did a bunch of stuff. So you were at Chrysalis for how long?
I was there for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and then that company was totally bought out by EMI, and it became SBK, EMI, Chrysalis. And I worked for Charles Koppelman and a gentleman named Fred Davis, who's a friend, who's Clive Davis's son, became the head of A&R. And it just got murky. And I was like really unhappy. And I was trying to sign acts and do this, and nothing was getting done. And again, no fault of anybody's. It was just a matter of the circumstances and the time. And I thought I'd made the first 3 Blues Traveler records at A&M, and I felt like I had this unfinished business. And I'm like, I'm going to go back to A&M, even though it's new, different ownership. And I'm going to make the 4th record, and I'm going to make one that has radio hit songs on this record.
Bruce Traveler were on A&M while you were there.
I signed Blues Traveler.
You signed Blues Travelers.
Signed them
while you were at A&M.
7 years ago.
And so then you go on to Chrysalis, and you're thinking, I got unfinished business with Blues Traveler at A&M. And
I go back. David Anderley, who was then the head of A&R, who's another iconic music executive and man, and was kind enough to hire me back, and went back, and we made the 4th Blues Traveler record that had Runaround and The Hook, which both blew up on radio, and we ended up selling 6 million records.
So they had that big, huge record under your kind of tutelage?
Me, and I hired the 2 producers, Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero, and made the record. It had Runaround. I remember going back to the office in L.A., played it for the 2 heads of the label. And they're like, oh, my God, we love this song, Runaround. It's like a Van Morrison song, The Girl That Gets Away. I said, guys, can I tell you something? Now, I knew after I made this record I was leaving because my friend Gary Gersh was about to hire me at Capitol Records. I said, guys, can I tell you a secret? And they're like, what is it? I said, well, it's not about the girl who got away that came back. And they look at each other on the couch. And I said, it's about you guys. And they didn't know what to think. And they're sort of smiling, and they have these odd looks on their face. I said, they wrote it about you guys because they're tired of you fucking lying to them.
Damn, that's what that song's about? Like the runaround,
Yeah.
getting the runaround.
Yep. I worked with Taj Mahal, got to work with Etta James.
Yeah, right. I see all those albums he's written. Patrick, I Love You, and Patrick, You're the
loved
Best.
her. I miss her.
What a talent.
And I got to work with her for about, I'm going to say, a good decade, if not 12 years. We made a number of records. One of the most magnanimous human beings ever. And I will not ever lose the idea and the passion and desire to turn her life into a theatrical property, whether it be in off-Broadway, Broadway, a film, a documentary. Just amazing. Her passion, her zeal, her knowledge, her life, the life she lived.
What a voice, huh? Like the Neville Brothers. What's this?
That was during A&M.
So what was your involvement with them? I mean,
well, I signed them.
First you signed them?
I signed them to A&M, and when I wanted to sign them, there was another gentleman who I love and revere that I don't know very well, and I wish I did know better, named Chris Blackwell, the founder of Island Records.
Right.
And Chris Blackwell wanted to sign them. And it was, you could feel it, you could see it. And I would talk to Herb and to Jerry and to David Anderley and to my boss, Steve. And they'd be like, you know what? Nobody cares. The black audience doesn't care. The white people don't care. I said, you got to see this. You got to hear this. It's amazing. Excuse me. And literally, I got to a point where, as an A&R guy, people say, oh, you're going to jump out the window for this? Or you're going to nail yourself to a cross for this? Well, I finally got to a point where I was in Miami, and I told Steve, I said, Steve, I'm not coming out of this hotel room until you let me sign the Neville Brothers. He goes, buddy, it's not going to happen. Herb said no. Jerry said no. Anderley doesn't care. He doesn't, whatever Herb and Jerry say. I said, Steve, I swear to God, I'm not coming out of this hotel room. I'm just going to keep the bill going until you stop paying it. And I finally told Steve, I said, Steve, I'm going to fly to Los Angeles Sunday night, and I'm going to chain myself to the gate. And when Herb Albert drives up in his
Maserati,
whatever, and Jerry Moss comes up in his
Lamborghini,
whatever, they're going to say, why is one of our employees chained to the gate? And literally the next day he called me before I went to that. He goes, okay, they want to talk about it. And I'm like, great. And we ended up signing them. Daniel Lenoir produced the record.
Daniel Lenoir, that Peter
did
Gabriel,
U2 and worked a lot
Gabriel,
with Chris.
Right?
Yeah. And it is a masterpiece.
How did you get to Nashville?
A lot of things weren't working out in life. My marriage wasn't working out. And I needed a job, and that's why I came to Nashville, Tennessee, rather than moving to Los Angeles. I thought...
What year was that when you moved to Nashville? 2008?
2005.
2005? And you went to work for...
a company called 1010 Music, Barry and Jewel Coburn, who to this day, if they walked in here, I would get on my knees and thank them.
And you made a good friend of a songwriter that we both know named Robert Ellis Arl, right?
Well, I met Robert in 1980 when I worked for Nat Weiss and tried to sign Robert as a singer-songwriter from Boston.
Really?
Yes. That's how I know Robert. And then I would see him until...
You met him in Nashville.
No, I met him... I tried to sign him in the 80s as a singer-songwriter. And he signed to RCA. He made records at what was Peter Gabriel's studio back in the day.
Right.
And I never, ever saw him. And then the second night I'm in Nashville, I didn't see this guy in 2005. I've not seen this guy in 15, 18, 20 years. And I see this man across the way at the Ryman Auditorium at the ASCAP Country Awards ceremony. And I walk up, I said, you're Robert Ellis Arl, aren't you? And he goes, no, I'm Bob. I said, no, you're not. You're Robert Ellis Arl. He goes, nope, you're mistaken. I'm Bob. I'm like, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I walk away, and he goes, and you're Patrick Clifford. So that's how we reconnected that night. The second night I was in Nashville, living here in my friend Kurt Denny's house, who I love and adore, with 2 little suitcases while my then still wife and 2 small children were in Austin, Texas.
And did you sign Robert Ellis Arl at 1010 as a songwriter, or was he already signed?
I did, but the boss said, oh, no, I've signed Robert. I knew Robert before you did. I'm like, no, you didn't, but he's here because of me.
So you signed in the 1010, and then he went on and did that Taylor Swift record, right?
He had done the Taylor stuff before that.
Oh, before that.
Yeah. But I tried to bring Infinity Cat, his boys, and he and that label into it. And in retrospect, that's the greatest deal that never happened for everybody.
Right. How do you like Nashville? I mean, it was so weird. Like you just take 2 nights that we have spent, the last 2 nights that we have spent. Okay, we go, and I thought this was just amazing. We go to a club called the Basement East. We go to see a showcase. It was put on by BMI for record people. It's open bar. There's maybe a dozen people in there. It's you, Disney guy, and it's Interscope, just 2 guys from Interscope, and you're there to see 2 bands. No exaggeration. The first band comes on, and I'm with you guys. 1 minute, and you sit there and you go, let's go. And we go and we walk around to the other part of the club, with the out of that showcase area, and I'm like, you knew instantly that it wasn't happening. So we're just like kind of watching the pregame for the Nashville Predators and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then we hear the other bands start up, and we go back into the club, and it was another minute, and
I think it was 35 seconds.
yeah, and then you're like, okay, let's leave, and I mean that's how long you get, right?
There's only one impression that matters to everything in life for the most part. And I don't mean this across the board and everything in life, but it's the first impression.
Yeah.
And and especially in this, you get one time to make an impression.
Yeah.
And again, Timmy, I've been doing this a long time. I know what I like.
Yeah, but
there's a lot of stuff that's successful that I don't care for, and they're not trying to impress me, but you just know. Like, if you bite into a hamburger and it's like, this is a bad hamburger.
Yeah, but still, okay.
I'll go over here and get a better hamburger.
4 years ago, we go to the other basement club over in Nashville, the small one, little teeny one. We see a band called St. Paul and the Broken Bones.
Yes.
And you turned to me in the first minute and you said, "Star time."
Well, and if you remember, before we went, we were at the Greenhouse, and I called my friend Rodney Hall from Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, a place that I revere, and a guy I love, and his father who changed musical landscape for so many people. And I said, Rodney, what's up with this band St. Paul and the Broken Bones? They're from Athens, which is just a few miles away. And he goes, man, let me tell you something, Patrick. Guy looks like Drew Carey's little brother, but he is a soul singer. And I'm like, okay, and we went, and we met him before they played.
Right.
And they'd only been playing for a little bit of time.
Just got
and we
together.
were there, and it was like Mother of God.
And you loved them, and it was instant. It was, in other words, it was that same minute that you were like, okay, these guys are great. The same minute that took the other two bands at the showcase 2 nights ago to say that they suck.
Right.
Then yesterday we go to a showcase at William Morris.
East Room.
William Morris, and we go see this band, and everybody who's anybody is there in this brand new office building, in this brand little studio with with lights and sound, and these people that were put together, and once again, it's like, and I agreed with you, it was nothing. There was nothing. There was nothing there.
Right.
So, and then later on last night, we go to a club that I didn't even know existed. It's this teeny little club. There's nothing but 18-year-olds there. We see two bands.
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.
Dreamwave and Soccer Mommy.
Right.
And why doesn't everybody have boots on the ground at that club rather than, doing showcases in some sterile or, some phony put together? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like boots on the ground, like getting down and dirty in a club like where we were last night till midnight, watching a band that really, the Soccer Mommy was really good.
Well, she's better than good.
Yeah, really good. Like,
she's got a point of view.
Yeah.
Singular, authentic, very talented, and somebody who wants to do it because she wants to do it. And she can't be any more than 19 or 20.
No.
But she's got a sense of purpose, a point of view, and a desire.
The thing that happened last night that didn't happen the night before for the BMI showcase with the two bands where we walked out after 30 seconds, to the thing at the William Morris thing where we stayed for 2 minutes and left. The thing that happened last night was connection. But the thing that was really cool about it, your instincts, and I don't want to be kissing your ace, but your instincts were totally right.
It's my ass, not ace.
No, your instincts were totally right. And that was I'm like, this is a guy who can sit there and look at a Blues Traveler, at a Neville Brothers, at an Etta James, at a Romantics that still has like that kind of, this is good, this ain't, this is something that's vital, this is connection, this doesn't connect. You still have that kind of, and we walked out of there, both of us like kind of hopeful, like, hey, there's still something out there, that's vital, that's connecting something to somebody, right?
Well, again, the magic of it was being blessed to be there at the right time, at the right, moment to see that, to being hip to it by a 21-year-old kid who is my son,
Harry James Clementi
who
Clifford.
said he was, running the door, a guy who's doing social media, EPKs, videos, because he's invested. And I've never, aside from taking my daughter to shows or my son to shows when he was young, been in a nightclub where I got to go to the front of the stage because I wanted to be at the front of the stage and stand behind my 18-year-old daughter who didn't know I was there. And she turned around and like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm just digging this. How about you? You dig this? And then watching my son. And again, before we went in there, we met so many young people. And I said, this is the future and this is their future. And to see it is a blessing. And it's also just a reaffirmation of like what we did when we were their ages. And someone's going to do it again 20 years from now that's going to pop out of either, their lives or not. It's all subjective. It's all about having a point of view. Nobody has a stranglehold on popular culture. Nobody.
Yeah,
okay?
but still, it takes someone with a set of ears, no matter if they're 18-year-old or 80 years old. It takes someone with a set of ears to sit there and say, you know what, that's good, and let's get behind that for a minute.
Well, again, last night I thought what's going on here in this town and how young it's becoming and the breadth of music. And so much of it has nothing to do with contemporary country radio and lifestyle music.
This was not country music last night.
No, this was alternative rock music.
This was alternative rock, right? All pop,
there's singer-songwriters,
whatever.
People with a point of view and stories to tell. And there's so much of that here now. And that's why it's a blessing to be here.
Are you going to stay here?
Until they kick me out. I tell the kids... For you, it's Candyland. For me, it's the Alamo. When the Mexicans get through, I'm going to grow a little mustache, put on a sombrero, and learn a little Espanol, un poquito.
All right, let's go eat.
Okay, let's eat.
All right, that was my conversation with legendary music biz guy Patrick Clifford. After we finished our little conversation, we walked up the street and had dinner at a great little restaurant called Lockland Table. And now here I am in Carlsbad, California, dog sitting for my friend Mitch and her husband. We've been friends for a while. Mitch once called me in the studio while I was working on a song for the new Bonafide CD, the latest one, number 4, if you're counting. And after I hung up the phone, I had to leave the studio for a gig, and Rick, my trusty slim amigo and engineer, asked me what to call the song I was working on, and I told him to call it Mitch. And then he asked me, Mitch? And I said, yes, Mitch, that's the name. So Rick wrote down the name of the song as Mitch. And when we got to mixing the song with Mark Antoine, who produced the CD, I told him I wanted to change the name. I had always thought I'd change the name, but Mark liked the name Mitch, so it went on the CD as Mitch. And it ended up being the first single off the CD. And here it is, a song from the Bonafide 4 CD, a song called Mitch.